The Prenatal-to-3 State Policy Roadmap is a guide for state leaders to help them develop and implement the most effective policies and strategies that create a stronger and more equitable system of support for infants and toddlers and their parents. Based on comprehensive reviews of the most rigorous evidence available, the State Policy Roadmap identifies 5 effective policies and 6 effective strategies that help to create the conditions in which children thrive. In addition to providing guidance on what works, the roadmap monitors states' annual progress toward adopting and fully implementing these effective state actions, and measures the well-being of infants and toddlers in each state. You can explore the U.S. Roadmap, which provides a summary of all states' progress and well-being, or explore any individual state and the District of Columbia by using the drop-down menu. The U.S. Roadmap begins with a summary page. It shows the number of states that have fully implemented each of the effective policies, as well as the states that are leading the way in implementing the effective strategies. The summary also briefly highlights the legislative and administrative activity states engage in over the last year toward policy adoption. Scroll down to see how the 8 science-driven Prenatal-to-3 policy goals align with the 5 effective roadmap policies and 6 effective strategies. Each column represents one of the 8 policy goals, and the shaded circles in each row indicate that the policy or strategy positively impacts that goal and enhances the well-being of infants, toddlers, and their parents. The framework also illustrates the child and family outcome measures that are associated with each policy goal, which we are tracking over time. In addition to providing information on what works, the State Policy Roadmap tracks states' progress toward adopting and implementing the effective policies. To date, 6 states have fully implemented all 5 of the roadmap policies, and another 16 states have implemented at least 3. Over time, the hope is that all states fully implement all 5 effective policies. Over the past year, 8 states fully implemented at least one new policy this year: Connecticut, Delaware, Kentucky, Indiana, Maryland, Nevada, Washington, and Virginia implemented 2. This year, for the first time, we have included our simulation of how policy choices impact family resources across states within the roadmap, illustrating the wide variation across states. These analyses also highlight how the level of resources available vary across states based on 2 other important policy choices: Medicaid expansion and a paid family leave program of at least 6 weeks. The U.S. Roadmap summary page also shows how opportunities and outcomes vary considerably for infants and toddlers across states. These measures help states to set priorities for where to begin to build a stronger and more equitable Prenatal-to-3 system of support. More detailed information is available for each effective policy and strategy, and you can select the one that interests you. Each policy profile begins with a snapshot of the policy goals that it impacts, the states that have fully implemented the policy, and a brief summary of the progress states have made toward adopting the policy in the past year. Strategy profiles are similar, except that, in the absence of clear guidelines on legislative or regulatory actions a state can take to garner the impacts at a statewide level, the roadmap provides state leaders that are implementing evidence-based programs and making them accessible to a significant number of families. Each policy and strategy also includes a summary of associated outcomes. This is where you can go to find examples of the positive impact the policy can have on Prenatal-to-3 policy goals, such as healthy and equitable births and a parent's ability to work. For example, this table indicates that a paid family leave policy of at least 6 weeks has been shown to lead an average increase of $3,400 in household income among mothers of 1-year-olds and an 8 percentage point increase in maternal labor force participation in the months surrounding birth, among many other things. In addition, the roadmap provides information on the legislative and administrative activities states engage in toward policy adoption, including whether the state introduced legislation, if that legislation met the roadmap threshold, and if it was enacted. We know that policy change often takes time, and that progress is often made even if the policy is not fully implemented. Hover over a state for details on its legislative activity. Policies can vary considerably across states, so the roadmap provides details on how each state implements a given policy. Paid family leave policies, for example, vary in the weeks offered, the portion of wages workers receive, funding mechanisms, and more. Each state has its own page, providing a snapshot of the policies the state has fully implemented, and indicates with a star the strategies on which the state is considered a leader. The state roadmap provides details on how each state compares to others in terms of policy and strategy implementation and aligned child and parent outcome measures. For example, the Connecticut roadmap indicates that it is one of 25 states that is fully implementing a minimum wage of $10 or greater. Connecticut's minimum wage is currently $14 an hour. Higher minimum wages should reduce the percentage of children who have at least one full-time working parent but are still living near poverty. In Connecticut, 13.4% of children have a working parent and are still living near poverty. Compared to other states, this is relatively low, especially compared to the poorest performing states where more than 1/3 of children with a full-time working parent are still living near poverty. The state roadmap also provides details on how state policy choices impact a family's annual resources and how it compares to other states. Connecticut is ranked 19 out of 51 states. Data are provided illustrating the range on 20 outcome measures of child and family well-being between the state in which children and their parents are faring the best and the state in which they are faring the worst, and demonstrates where the state fits within that range. These data can help state leaders prioritize their Prenatal-to-3 policy goals and track the well-being of children and families. Finally, each state profile includes demographic characteristics. These data are a useful way to understand the population of infants and toddlers in your state, the unique needs they may have, and whether the needs are similar by race and ethnicity, geography, and socioeconomic status. The roadmap also provides comparisons of outcome measures across all states and by race and ethnic group for each of the 20 outcome measures. The goal is to create a stronger and more equitable system of support for infants and toddlers, so we should see reductions in race and ethnic disparities in these measures as more states implement the roadmap policies and strategies. The final section of the roadmap provides information on the demographic characteristics of infants and toddlers and their parents. Where possible, the information is disaggregated by race and ethnicity. For detailed information on all of the data used in the roadmap and our sources, visit the Methods and Sources page. The Prenatal-to-3 State Policy Roadmap builds on the science of the developing child and identifies the 11 most effective investments that states can make to empower parents and foster the conditions in which children thrive from the start. This guide for state leaders also illustrates the progress that states are making toward implementing the effective solutions, and it allows state leaders to monitor the well-being of infants and toddlers over time.